So as you can see there, we have a nice amount of width, depth, and height to this thing, with that depth being a little bit more than what we'd see inside of a few other vehicles in this class. Now we do have the option of easily folding down these third row seats as well. Folding them down straight forward. So as you can see there, we've got a little handle. We're just gonna pull that up to release the top, fold it down. Same idea, so we're just gonna lift up, gently fold it down. We've got that third row folded down instead. So a lot more depth inside of this. Now, there are a few different measurements that are coming up for the actual cargo dimensions there, specifically for the height. There's a few other options because we've got the base measurement, so from the very bottom tray to the very top of the loading area. But if we go a few more inches in, we've got another one from the very bottom to the very top. So we get a couple extra inches of space when we move inside of the trunk there instead. So a few different options. Like I said, it's going to depend on how we have these seats folded down, if we have that second row folded down, etc. But the reason why I've got these multiple measurements is because you're not going to be able to get a giant box in there, but if you're stacking things, you'll get a couple extra inches of space inside. Now take a peek at the difference there when we've got that second row folded down. So one of the nice things in that when we're in that 7-seat configuration, so we are a 60-40 split for that second row, so 60 driver, 40 passenger, so we can fold down one side or the other if we wanted to. Now obviously if we had the bench seat instead, we wouldn't have to worry about that second seat. We could fold down the left or the right side individually of one another if we wanted to do that. But quite a little bit of depth inside of this, like I'm actually fairly surprised. Now, lifting up the seats as well is also pretty straightforward. So we've literally just got a handle there, we're just gonna pull that up. And same idea, we're just gonna pull that up and then we can also lift the headrests up. Now, that's actually one of the cool things because we do have the option of easily lifting up these headrests if we wanted to, and then from the inside, in that media screen, we also do have an option of lowering these things as well. Now, one thing that is unique to the Grand Cherokee L is what Jeep introduced this year, and that's the third row inside of this vehicle. So it is available either as a 6 or 7-seat configuration. Default is going to be a 6, and we've got the option for a 7 when we get the bench row from the factory. Now, this is actually kind of a neat thing because I love the way that these seats lift up because we've got a little latch just along the top there. We can pull that up and look at this. I love it. It's a lift up and it's a slide forward, so you can like super easily get into the back of this thing. It's really, really cool. Let's have a look at some third row spacing. Well, this is actually pretty nice spacing wise because we do have the flexibility to be able to move this second row backwards and forwards a little bit if we need to create some more spacing for the third row instead. But when I bounce myself over and look at third row spacing, like this is actually pretty good because this second row seat is literally back as far as it'll go. With that seat, my knee is just touching. So not a ton of space back here when that second row is all the way backwards. But like I said, we can move these things backwards or forwards if we need to. Pop that down so you can see me a little bit more. So a few things to point out back here. Like I said, spacing wise is actually pretty nice. Like I'm kind of surprised at how much space is actually back here. Like up overhead, with me sitting fully upright, I've got about an inch of head space. So not a ton of space, but I mean, typically I'm not gonna be sitting in the third row being 6 feet tall, but at the same time, you choose the short straw, you'd be able to fit back here comfortably. Now, a few things to point out. We do have a little bit of storage along the left side there. We've got a few bottle holders. They're pretty small holders, but they're at least there. And then we've got quite a few power points back here. Like we've got 4 total USB ports in the third row. 2 in the driver, 2 in the passenger, USB as well as our USB-C. So great job on Jeep for throwing so many power points back here. And one of the cool things, up overhead, we've got a little camera there. And that's a neat one for a few reasons. So it actually, I don't want to say a nanny cam because in the Jeep world, they actually call it a fam cam, which is kind of an interesting choice of word. But what it does is it gives the driver the option of seeing what's going on in the second and third row. So you've got kids that are screaming, yelling, etc., fighting. There's a button that we can press on that Uconnect media screen in order to see what's going on in this back row. Now, for my first impressions of the second row, this is actually pretty nice back here. Super comfortable, very spacious. As I said, we do have a few options for this middle row. So by default, it's just going to be a 6-seat configuration with an easier pass through to the back. We'll have dual captain chairs there. Now, there is the option, as you can see here, for the bench seat instead. So the bench seat, it's one of the cool things about that is that if you need something with a 7-seat configuration, good option. And with these seats, because they literally tilt up and fold forward, you don't necessarily have to worry about spacing the same way or easier pass through to the back there. Super simple inside of this thing, which is typically not something we see that often with third row vehicles. So it is cool to know that Jeep was kind of forward thinking with the way that they designed these seats. Now, like I said, the seats themselves are actually surprisingly comfortable. And with the driver's seat set up for somebody 6 feet tall, I still have plenty of knee space here. So plenty of knee space, plenty of foot space. Up overhead, I've got about 3 inches roughly of head space. So plenty of space back here, which is great. And one of the cool things about this second row is that we've got a little lever in between our legs there, so we can literally slide this seat forwards and backwards a little bit to create more space for people in the back. So with the seat pushed up even more, so I'm still fairly comfortable in this third row, I created even more space. So now I'd be more comfortable in that third row as well, while still having more than enough space for the second here. So that's definitely a nice thing. Now, the seats themselves, we do have option for cloth or leather depending on the trim level of the vehicle we're looking at, and there are all types of leather, again, depending on which trim. Now, overall, like I said, great look. We do have some pockets in behind the first and the second row there, a series of different climate control settings just in behind the armrest there as well. Now, one of the cool things inside of the limited trim level, we do have second row heated seats. Now, the heated seats are going to be the outboard seats, so we're never going to have a middle seat that's going to be heated inside of this thing. And one of the nice things is, as we get into some of the higher trim levels, we do also have the option for a ventilated second seat and a front row ventilated seat as well. So really, really nice for those warmer summer months. But other than that, we've got some basics for our vent control there as well. Moving down, we've got a 150 watt power point, so our traditional wall outlet, we can plug that back in here, and we've got even more power points. Like, it's kind of insane how much power, all the power. Then we've got 2 more USB ports and 2 more USB-C here as well. So we've got a total in the second and the third row of 8 total power points here. And just from what I see there are 4 more inside of that front row as well. So a boatload of power points all throughout this vehicle, which is definitely a nice thing. A few other things to point out back here. We do have cup holders. So 2 cup holders there. And what else? We've got some basic for our lights there, so we can control our cabin lights. We've got a handle, a little hook along the side as well. We do have some basic vents just beside, or I should say just behind our driver passenger seat there, which is kind of nice. We can control the venting there. We've got our basics, so our unlock lock, window up and down, and then we've also got a little storage space along both of our second row doors as well. So kind of neat what they've done back here.